This episode of the Better Every Shift podcast is sponsored by MagnaGrip, America's choice for clean air. Eliminate 100% of airborne toxins from within the station with MagnaGrip. Learn more at magnagrip.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Better Every Shift podcast. My name is Aaron Zamzow. I am a fire lieutenant in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm also a contributing writer and author for Fire Rescue One. And with me, as always, is I found a new title for you. I was watching a great film on, space, and they referred to the person in charge there as the commander. And I think that's a perfect title for you, Commander Janelle Fisquette. And also the editor-in-chief of Fire Rescue One. How are we doing today, Janelle?
I'm doing good. It's always good to get a promotion. I like it.
Yeah, we called you the colonel last time. I think commander is a little bit of a promotion. We'll see about getting the marketing department to change your business cards. I think that one is probably going to stick. I'm really excited, as you could kind of tell. I always am, but when we get to talk to a friend and a colleague, I get a little probably more higher octave in my voice and a bigger smile on my face, because we have with us today Dr. Derrick Edwards, who is a very, very smart individual, but he's also one of the most genuine and nice human beings in the world. How you doing, Doc? Thanks for joining us today.
I'm blushing right now, but other than that, doing well. I now feel like I'm going to let all of your listeners down. So great. I'm doing great.
No pressure. Yeah, no pressure. Just relax and talk like we're there picking on Chief Frank Lieb, like we were the other day in Tucson, where we were just both speaking at a conference, and we had some great conversation. And I thought we have to get this on the podcast. And so again, thanks for being here. But let me just kind of give everybody that's listening just a little brief bio about who you are and what you do, and just the framework of what we'll talk about a little bit here. You're Dr. Derrick Edwards. You're professional counselor, mental health service provider. You serve as assistant professor of psychology at Tennessee Tech, where you also operate the TTU Responder Health Lab. You've been researching the psychological effects of being a first responder for a long time, almost 20 years, I want to say. You joined the fire service in 2004. You're a firefighter EMT. And you're also a member of the Tennessee Federation of Fire Chaplains, the TFFC, and a very smart individual. You really are. Great presenter. I just saw you speak, and you were talking obviously about mental health. You were talking about just some of the things what research shows us that we should expect as a first responder. And our conversation started off with, okay, 5 years, from 1 to 5 years, and then 5 to whatever years, you can see a kind of this divide. Can you elaborate on what we were talking about there?
Yeah. So first of all, you forgot in the bio, long walks on the beach, and I am a Sagittarius.
And a tremendous haircut. For those that aren't watching on video, you got to see he's got a great haircut.
Yeah. It sometimes gets down in my eyes, and then I just put it right in the trash can. And that works well. So that 5-year mark is such an important mark. So what we see is at around 5 years, we know that research shows us a quarter of all people who went through training to become an emergency responder, roughly a quarter of those will no longer work in fire EMS any longer. The financial burden. So like for those listening right now who are in that officer level, that's a lot of money invested in a very poor return. To lose somebody after only 5 years is not a good return on investment. But the downside of this is it's also not great for the person who we lost after that 5 years as well. And the reasons that people give, there's all sorts of them. One of them used to be and still is. I don't want to discount it at all, but salaries. What folks make tends not to be in line with the type of work that they do. But interestingly enough, as we see salaries going up and up and up across the nation in the world of emergency response, we're not seeing massive shifts in what people are are doing at that 5 year mark. We're still seeing folks leave the service and go do other type of work. So it just kind of became the low hanging fruit. One of my, and I know you've heard me say this a thousand times, Aaron, so I'm sorry about it, but one of my litmus tests is when you go to a restaurant at 5 years, if you go with your family, they no longer ask which seat you want to sit in. They know that you want the seat with your back to the wall where you can see the door. And we don't even recognize that we do it. And I think that's what's interesting about being a researcher of something that I am involved in, is sometimes I see these things and I'm like, oh crap, like that's me. Like I wish that wasn't me, but I don't like my back to the door. I don't. One of those areas in our brain that changes is called your amygdala, which is always looking for things that are dangerous. So amygdala is responsible for fear and aggression. It does other things, so don't write in. I know, but fear. It's always looking for things that might be dangerous. And in the emergency responders world, what's dangerous is like nearly everything. You know, we can be having a card game at the dinner table, and then the tones drop. So your brain starts to say like, hey, at any moment it could get real. And if it's going to get real, I need to make sure that I'm ready to go. So I need to make sure my resting heart rate's higher. I need to make sure that I've got a lot of low hanging energy stores available. It's one of the reasons we crave things like sugary, starchy, and fat foods. Now, I would like to go on record as saying that those are also all of the delicious foods. So, like, I'm not going to beat those up too much, right? But our body's just trying to say at any moment we got to be ready. And at that 5 year mark, we tend to be different, and we tend to be different for the remainder of our existence. But that's not broken. I know you've heard me say that we're not broken individuals. We're just different. So that 5 year mark is really important. So if you're listening, you've been involved in fire EMS or emergency response for 5 years or more, uh, I think you'll agree. You're different, and that's probably okay.
Yeah, and you're not alone. I think as people are listening to this, they're kind of going, yeah. Especially the thing about the door, and then I've had conversations with other first responders where there's like if there's a crack in a mic or a special sound,
Yeah.
that we're used to hearing before the tones go off or before a pager goes off. Being at a fire conference, and if there's a lot of volunteers there and a pager goes off, the room quiets and everyone kind of turns, and but you can hear you can feel everyone's take a deep breath, and everybody's heart rate is
Absolutely.
kind of elevated a little bit. So there are those little nuances. Now, we were just at a great conference together, and you were speaking about managing the impact of behavioral health challenges and their biopsychosocial impact. And and Janelle was looking at me going, well, what does he really mean by that? And I think that ties into this, 5 year mark and some of the things that we see. But what were the gests of uh, uh topics that you talked about when in that particular presentation?
Yeah, full disclosure, the that description for that session certainly wasn't authored by me.
Okay. I
But
think
it
I know who
sounded
did it.
wonderful.
Yeah.
I think I do too. I would never out Sarah Jenke like that though. So that's good. So I'm
Dr.
glad we're
Sarah Jenke,
protecting
I
her.
wouldn't do that either to her. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be just awful. What we have to look at is if, and I believe strongly that we are whole people, right? If right now you're listening, you're like, I don't think I'm a whole person. Well, that's sad. Like, and which part are you? Okay, so like I think we're whole people. So we have a bio side of us. We talked about our amygdala. We have a psycho side of us, which isn't that doesn't star in like a slasher movie. The psycho of us is like this internal dialogue that we wrestle with. It might be the insecurities that we walk around with every day, and we are social creatures. In fact, we're actually more than social creatures. We're what are called ultra social creatures, because not only do we like groups, but we can take a group activity and divide it into separate tasks and put it together for one bigger piece. So we're even more than social. So in your work as an emergency responder, you're not just influencing the biology, right? You can't just change the way you process threat responses. To what you're saying, that the sound of that first cue up of a mic is a sound that the vast majority of people never hear. Like
Hmm.
they get surprised. But we know when someone's about to make an announcement. We can hear the cue up. Like it's immediate. Uh, my master's thesis, I focused on a physiological response to those types of things, and just having someone hear that they were getting paged to an emergency call took them from a resting rate of around 70 to tachycardia. And when you ask them, how stressful do you think hearing those tones were? The answer is always, oh, not at all, right? So there's a biological problem that's going on that has a psychological impairment because we can't notice that we're having a biological change. And so sometimes our thoughts get a little different, right? So that psycho side, uh, we quickly stop believing in what's known as the just fallacy. And I think this is good that we stop believing in that. The just fallacy is that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. And you don't have to work for even 5 years to realize that that is not true. That good things happen to good and bad people, and unfortunately, bad things happen to good and bad people as well. It's this kind of chaos that we live in. This kind of shield that most people get to live under. That can believe things like cartoon movies that always have a happy ending for the good characters. Because that's what we like to think. Just it isn't true. But then the social component is because we're changing, we actually struggle with socialization. My doctoral dissertation looked at a concept known as alexithymia. And in alexithymia, we struggle to recognize what we're feeling, to modulate it internally, but then most importantly, express it to others. So if I don't know what I'm feeling, how to change the level of it, or tell anyone, I've now eliminated what research shows is the best coping mechanism possible, which is called pro-social coping, reaching out for help, or recognizing that I'm not alone. But all three of these things, they cascade in a way that actually makes it difficult for us to have healthfulness, and makes it pretty easy for us to spiral into a level that we never saw coming.
Mm-hmm. Which then leads to all the vast number of health issues, right? Because of the biological response we have, we don't think we're having a biological response. And
Right.
then because of that biological response and what we become accustomed to, we, from a chemical standpoint, don't like to talk about it or socially talk about it, right?
Yeah.
And what that is doing is, as you and I talked about, is it's really setting us up for this crash course of mental health problems, of
100%.
physical problems. So that's the bad news of it. And there is actually a chemical, there's a chemical validation to that. And I think that's kind of what you've just been telling us is, hey, right, when you're seeing these things and feeling these things, that's what your research is telling us, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't always this way, right? We see what we call the British empiricism, or sometimes referred to as the Great Enlightenment. This is when we saw just a flat rejection of what was at one time known as the metaphysical. So the metaphysical were things that we couldn't put in a test tube, and we couldn't measure them very well. We often talk about eras, and we'll describe it as an era's zeitgeist. So what was kind of the theme of that day? And in the Enlightenment, the zeitgeist was the physical. And this is kind of like the groundwork that would lead Nietzsche to say that God is dead. Not necessarily that God is dead or not dead, but because you can't measure God, it can't exist. It's metaphysical. So this rejection of the metaphysical. So when we start looking at the interventions we've been exposed to as emergency responders to help us with the persistent level of stress that we experience, most all of them are physical, biological interventions, and they exclude that psychological and especially that sociological intervention. So we've really kind of hold ourselves off, and I think that is the bad news. Is I meet a lot of responders who believe that they are truly broken. That they have a dysfunctional neuronal system. When I quite honestly have a hard time buying that we are broken humans given what we've experienced.
Yeah, you're only broken if you don't really do anything about it.
100%.
Right? Yeah. And
yeah.
And we've had great conversations about, the bad news is there's research that shows we're messed up. The good news is now we're more aware of it, there are a lot of things we can do, right? There's a lot of things that we could do. to change that. So based on your research, and for those listening, okay, now they're going, this guy just said a lot of big words, but I think I get what he's saying. It's like there's chemical stuff going on that I've probably denied. So what's the first thing you want people to start to do to improve their mental health that we can do? That's a pretty easy step.
Yeah. My step number one is take a breath, right? Like it's such an important thing to do, to take a breath. Recognizing that we are, and I really borrowed this phrase here recently, and because I absolutely love it. But the term is anti-fragile.
Yeah,
We
love
are
it.
we are anti-fragile, right? When we struggle, we don't break. We actually get stronger, given a certain set of circumstances, like a good social support system, right? So take a breath and then surround yourself with people who are in this journey with you. If we can do those two things, first of all, we're making lots of strides already. What research will show us is that there's this new concept, and it's not new, it's just getting more traction now, called post-traumatic growth. The thing that I'll talk about a lot, I can't do anything about post-traumatic stress, right? Post-traumatic stress is simply the stress that results after a trauma. Like that's just the basic definition. But I treat what's called post-traumatic stress disorder. We forget that the disorder is a separate word in the world of post-traumatic stress. I can't do anything with the stress. That's, you got called to that. This is what you're doing. What we can do is prevent the disorder, right? And actually facilitate growth. Now, not only am I not damaged, I'm better than I ever could have been, because
Yeah.
I appreciate life more, because I understand the fragility of every moment with others, because I can see that I'm actually empowered to have a better human existence, a more peak human existence than folks who never struggled, who never had a challenge, or who never witnessed true humanity. I say it's like the most burdensome gift you've ever been given is when you become an emergency responder.
How do we change our outlook though? Because there's so many people that go, woe is me, right? But you have to flip the switch in a way to have that insight and that take that particular path and mindset. How do we do that?
I think it starts with our ability to recognize what we do is inherently stressful, right? Um, our initial our initial gut instinct is going to tell us to minimize and pretend, right? It's
Yeah.
not so bad. It is what it is. It's part of the job. All of those things that we've said, and they're not necessarily wrong. It's just it misses the part of the story, which is that we are called to deal with highly stressful, difficult things. And simply acknowledging that they are highly stressful and difficult doesn't mean we're weak. It means we're observant, right? We look at a house, and let's say we roll up on scene and we've got heavy black smoke. It has already vented itself at a part of the roof. And this is a fire where we're really worried about apparatus placement so we don't melt headlights, right? We'll look at this fire and with reason, we'll say that is a fire that if we are going to try to make an interior attack, we're going to have to be smart about this because this is a fire that's going to just flat kill us,
Yeah.
right? We have to recognize what we're dealing with as a problem so we don't kill our full selves. Well,
Yeah.
in the mental health side of things, we have to recognize, we have to do a scene size up. If I'm working a series of calls that are emotionally laden, maybe I don't experience that emotional burden because I've distanced myself, right? But if others are experiencing an emotional burden, like families, if they're squalling, if they are upset, I need to take stock of this. This is like my smoke, right? If I get on scene and I hear people screaming, that is me reading the smoke of that scene, right?
Mm.
It's just a different sense and a different use, because this is going to be something. This is going to be something I need to watch for, and that recognition goes a long way to help us understand what's happening. One of those phrases that I use all the time, right, is we got to give reverence to the reverent. Uh, to recognize that we are engaged in a moment of reverence in someone's life, and to give that its due, and that's a difficult thing, I think, for us to do, because more often than not we want to just move on, push on, go to the next call, and in some cases we work in such a busy hall or busy station, processing time is non-existent.
Yeah. So you have to, when I'm hearing you say is sometimes you have to figure out ways to do that, and breathing is one of the quick, easy ways to do that. Is there like, do you like box breathing or,
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
I love box breathing.
is that four,
In
four,
for
four,
four.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. In for four, hold for four, out for four, hold for four. Your body cannot sustain a level of excitement that is pathological if you are engaged in box breathing. Um, it, it, it's like a biology hack. Like
Yeah. Well, it
it's perfect.
switches the parasympathetic and sympathetic pathways, correct?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
right now, Janelle is floored that I knew that, and she's like, "Who is this guy?" But every once in a while, I can throw some health and wellness at you. But in it, I believe is the research showing like 4 minutes of or a minute of box breathing, fairly consistently can do that. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah. This is no different than the mindfulness research that is out there, which is growing in its abundance and in its power. Box breathing forces you to focus on one aspect of you, right? And we can do breathing exercises kind of mindlessly, but we have to be engaged for box breathing. And that ability to say, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm focused in the moment, it does absolutely activate that parasympathetic nervous system.
Keep coming back to this thought of how we have to acknowledge that we're not always great at identifying our own weaknesses, whether it's, physical, something that's happening biologically in our body. And it seems like one of the big steps here is learning to just listen to other people around us. Like we are not always the best, at self evaluation. So
Yeah.
if somebody on your crew is saying, "Hey man, like you look tired, you seem stressed out, you're agitated lately," like they probably have a better understanding of what you're going through if we are often so kind of sealed off from wanting to acknowledge what's going on. So we got to like listen to other people too, and as part of this process, but that also places the onus on other people to speak up.
Right. And it's hard if I struggle with. I'll go back to alexithymia again. If I have a friend, a close friend, who says, I seem off, I seem different, my alexithymic response is going to be anger. Right. I don't believe anything makes us angry, and I know that statement might make some of them angry out there in the listening world. But I believe anger and the color green are exactly the same, in that neither of them exist. Right. I can see the color green, but green isn't a color, right? So let's do some quick art with you, Aaron. What colors do I need to make green?
Isn't that red and blue
Well, that would make purple.
or
So we'll
purple?
go with Commander.
It's blue and yellow.
Blue and
Blue
yellow.
and
There we go.
yellow,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
blue and yellow make green seal, and what keeps your sandwich
You're
safe,
asking a
right?
guy who's kind of colorblind. I wear black and red. That's all I do. Yeah. Anyways.
Well, there you go. So if I want to make something more green, I've got to add either more blue or more yellow. Well, anger, I believe, is the color green, and its two primary components are fear and hurt. If I want to be more angry, I'm going to have to either have more fear or have more hurt. When these things come together, when I'm highly fearful and highly hurt, it starts to look like rage, right? But I believe that's a secondary response, our body trying to protect ourselves. Now, the number of firefighters, EMS personnel, rescue squad members, LEOs that you've met who are angry as seeming, right? That number is a lot. If you're in a room right now listening to this, don't look at them. Just, we all know, right? There's angry people
Don't make eye
in our lives.
contact.
Yep.
Yeah, don't make
Eyes
eye
down.
contact. You look forward. You're going to be fine. Uh, but it's not anger. When I hear anger as a therapist, I'm really looking for that root. Where's the fear or where's the hurt? I've asked hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students to give me an example of something that makes them angry primarily. And not one of them has presented something to me that I couldn't distill down to either fear or hurt. So recognizing when I'm angry is a really good hack, because I can see when I look angry, right? I can see what I'm doing. And often people will tell me that I'm jaded, salty, bitter, angry. They'll tell me these things. That's a really good reference point. Hey, I've got something deeper that I've got to deal with.
And then take a breath. At that
Take a
point,
breath.
you recognize it first. First thing that you can do to combat it a little bit and change that mindset is take a breath, right?
Yeah.
What's another tool? Because
Yeah.
we're all about, give us tools that we can use to make us better every single shift, every single day. Box breathing is one. Recognition is another big one here. So keep laying this on us here. What do you got else? What else is there, Doc?
Probably my favorite psychological tool. So if we're going for breathing, which would be our bio, let's look at the psycho side. My favorite psychological tool is going to be fully acceptance of the emotion that's present. So if I am feeling sad or hurt or distant or lonely or whatever, to fully accept that as my experience. When I accept it as my experience, I allow it to pass, right? So they asked the Dalai Lama, say, Your Holiness, how is it that you never become angry? And he said, the trick isn't not to become angry; it's to allow your anger to come and go, right? It's a phenomenal idea, which is almost a paradox. Most everything that we do psychologically as emergency responders is an attempt to make something go away, right? That's also our job in essence, right? Something bad happens, we feel very strongly that we're supposed to go there and fix it, and that leads to a very fix it mindset. Instead, if I can just recognize what I'm experiencing and then accept that that's a valid experience, my emotion now has got my mental attention. So it doesn't need to get louder. It doesn't need to keep escalating. It will, what they call this is urge surfing. It will allow that motion to crest over, and it will diminish. You will not be sad forever. You will not be mad forever. You will not be hurt forever. And the faster I can validate that, the faster that wave will crash, and that urge surfing will end.
Do you have what's another technique that we can do to better kind of understand? Is there a question that you kind of ask yourself that says, okay, I mean, is it a Forrest Gump approach? What am I feeling right now? Or how do you in the moment though, right? Because these are the challenges. In the moment, you may have this high emotion. What's your cue?
Yeah. For me, I think you're hitting it nail on the head. It's to say, what is it that I'm feeling in this moment, right? I tell folks I love feelings. I just don't trust them, right? My feelings are not always accurate. But I love my feelings. My feelings certainly color and flavor my world. But man, I don't trust them for anything. For my undergrad students, I'll try to evidence this, like in my abnormal psychology course. I'll say, I want to prove to you that your emotions aren't always right. And they'll say, like, go ahead, or usually they're not in class at all. But then I'll ask them, uh, do you remember when you thought high school was very real? That those things that were happening, those social moves in high school, that they mattered so much. And most of them are like, yeah, I remember that. It's like, how right were you that they mattered as much as you thought they did? And they're like, oh, crap. And if I could have been that wrong then, well, I can be that wrong now. This is another fallacy that we run into. It's called the end of days fallacy. And it works for people around our age really well. You ask them two questions. How different will you be on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being completely different, 1 being no different at all? So how different will you be 10 years from now? And most people around our age will say, not that different, maybe 3 or 4. Then you follow it with a second question. How different are you today on that same scale of 1 to 10 than you were 10 years ago? Oh, I'm drastically different. I'm like a 9 or a 10 out of 10. A lot of things have changed in my life. We always think we've arrived. So when I recognize that my feelings are present, my first thought is to question them. Why am I feeling this? What's leading to my body feeling this? Validate them, right? I have to validate them. I have to say, I hear you. I know that you're present, but I'm not just going to lean into that and trust it. I then have to question, why is it that this is what I'm feeling?
Yeah, I'm not going to let it affect me either until I really validate it, right?
Yeah, there is no such thing as a good or a bad emotion. There are only emotions, right?
Mm.
And recognizing what has led them to be present in you in that moment is a very powerful tool. It is the premise of an entire style of therapy known as cognitive behavioral therapy, which is one of the most effective treatments we have against chronic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Protect yourself with MagnaGrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes in a snap. Visit magnagrip.com to download MagnaGrip's free grant guide with expert tips to solidify a grant for essential safety equipment, such as MagnaGrip's exhaust removal systems. That's magnagrip.com to download the free guide.
What do you do if you have acknowledged a feeling about something, anger, whatever it might be, and it's not passing? It's not passing. You keep thinking about it. I mean, we could be talking about something that happened, and then months later, you're still stewing on it, still ruminating. What do you advise?
So I wish I had a one size fits most for that question. Let me give you a couple of options, right? So if it's something, let's say it's a traumatic event, like let's say it's a call and you can't stop thinking about it. Um, I would encourage you to consider that you're trying not to think about it, and by trying not to think about it, you are by definition thinking about it. If every time a thought comes to my brain, my initial thought is don't think about it. We call this the white bear or the emotional paradox. I can't think about not thinking about something. So if I'm trying to avoid it, it gets worse. And I always teach this one like my daughter, if she comes to my bedroom and she says, Daddy, there's a monster in the closet. If I tell her to get in bed with me, I've told her two things. One, you're only safe with Daddy. And that's cute because she's young right now, but that's going to be a lot less cute when she gets older and I want to have stuff to do. And the other thing I've told her is that there's maybe really a monster in your closet. That's why I think it's okay for you to sleep here, which means tomorrow she's not going to be better. She's going to be worse. She's going to be more likely to come to my room. If we do this for a month of avoidant coping, which is oxymoronic, we can't both avoid something and deal with it. But a month of avoidant coping, she's going to feel terrible. I can turn her room into whatever I want because she's never going back there, right? It can be a man cave, a media closet, a home gym if I never wanted to walk in there. Sorry, Aaron. It could be whatever. It could be whatever, right? If I'm still ruminating on an event that had occurred, my brain is telling me that I haven't dealt with it. So in that particular instance, what I need my people to do is exposure. Um, Write it out in as much detail as possible is a great method to do this. Tell that story to a therapist in as much detail as possible, processing every aspect of it. Uh, because what happens is your brain knows that you've got some leftover stuff and it wants to file it away. Now, as soon as you tell it where to file, it's good, right? But if you're trying to avoid it, your brain keeps bringing that back to the front of your mind's eye. Hey, what do you want me to do with this? What do you want me to do with this? I tell folks it eventually turns into like Internet 2.0. It looks a lot like all of these other calls. Do you want me to put it there? So now it's not that one call I'm thinking of. I've got like the worst hits ever invented of maybe like child drowning calls or SIDS calls or things like that. And they all come start flashing one after another, all because it's trying to help me find the file, right? It's just trying to put it where it needs to go. But if my goal is to make that memory go away, I will live it every day. Right? I can't make it go away, but I never have to run that call again. Right? So I think that's a huge step to recognize I never have to do that call again. I might have to do calls like it, but not that one. Not unless I've got a DeLorean that I can get up to 88, right? Like
Yeah.
it's
Well, not
it's not
yet,
gonna
but
happen.
somebody's working on it, but it's not here
Somebody,
yet.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got some things I'd like to redo, so I'm pretty excited about that. Um, but that's we never do that one again. If it's an emotion, I would guess that the thing that you're ruminating on is anger, right? And if you stew, and the reason I say that is because you chose the word stew. I am a therapist, so forgive me for reading into your words. But we tend not to stew over our sadness, and we tend not to stew over our joy. We tend to stew over things that piss us off, right? It's the things that make us angry. Well, then we have to recognize that I'm not angry, right? We go back to anger is the color green. What am I really? Am I afraid or am I hurt? And when I can deal with either of those emotions, whichever one is my problem, I will stew, using your word, a lot less. So not a one size fits all, but there are key approaches in any of these circumstances.
But then it seems like you've got to then take it to, okay, I'm hurt. So then
Mhm.
how do you deal with the hurt? And,
Yeah, so then
it's like you keep working through these different cycles, right? Until you can distill it down.
an amazing thing about being hurt is your acknowledgement that you are hurt is often the thing that will soften the emotion the most. Psych ache, which is a term that we're using now to describe like my soul hurts. Psych ache is very similar to like a knee pain. And talking to a bunch of emergency responders, I know your knees hurt from time to time, right? Uh, my knee hurts to tell me that something's wrong. That's why I have pain receptors, right? Folks who are born without pain receptors tend not to make it past puberty, right? If I don't know that something's wrong because it hurts, I don't get it. I don't get it addressed. So recognizing that I'm hurt emotionally is often is often the really good step to make that hurt diminish, because the hurt is truly saying inside of your brain, okay, finally you hear me. You hear me. Now I get to wrestle with, am I hurt appropriately? Because sometimes I'm hurt when quite honestly, I don't deserve to be hurt, right? I took something wrong, or I personalized something that maybe wasn't meant for me. A good test for this is go on any social media and look at comments, and you'll see lots of folks who are trusting their feelings.
Yeah.
So we get to question that. Another thing is to validate when you're hurt. Hey, I didn't deserve that, especially if it was like you're genuinely hurt. Someone has done wrong to you. To validate that you didn't deserve that, and then to start marching towards a level of forgiveness. Uh, Forgiveness is almost antithetical to our culture, but it's for us. It's not for them. Often the people that hurt us the most could care less if you forgive them. It's us who are dealing with that hurt every day, not them.
Well, and a lot of this self-recognition that you talk about is, you have to be really in tune with your own self and your body and your
Yeah.
feelings. And um, how much does sleep affect this? How much does nutrition affect this? Now, kind of turning the steering wheel a little bit more to the physiological side of it and how it affects the psycho and social. What is your take on sleep?
Yeah, so we sleep because we have to, right? And I know that's a no does statement for nearly everybody listening, but I meet so many folks who will immediately discount the role of sleep in our physical and mental health. If we weren't required to sleep for us to heal our bodies and to rest our minds, I truly don't believe we would do it, right? So it is a needed process. I like to think of, and I know I'm kind of stepping in your area here, Aaron, but we are athletes, right? So we're in many cases like sports cars.
Yeah. If you have a
And
body, you are an athlete.
yeah, sports cars are notorious for you can't run them all day and they'll be completely okay the next day. They have to have a break, have to let that engine cool down, or you're going to melt the heads, right? And then you better be putting premium fuel in that sports car, or you're going to clog up your injectors, right? Uh, for us, that rest gives us a chance to not only start to heal the tissues of our body, a very physical healing of our body, uh, but it's during sleep where we actually encode all of our memories. We dump memories from short-term storage to long-term storage. We process things in our sleep, and some of those cells that we're attempting to repair exist between our ears, right? Our
Yep.
brains need that rest so that they're ready to go the next day. And I mean, I think anecdotally, we see this. You have probably at some point in your life been cursed with someone, or been hard on them, and then said, I'm so sorry, I'm just so tired, right? Well, we are awful to ourselves when we are tired and we forget to apologize, right? So if I'm not getting sleep, there's no amount of emotional recognition that's gonna help me. I've got to help that physical side of me, so that I can help the other sides of me as well. So our shifts. Uh, Another shout out to Dr. Sarah Jenke and her putting out a lot of research regarding sleep and the shift cycles, and the results from her are really, really clear, frustrating at the same time. Is that there's no one right answer. It's really department specific. One of the things I'm seeing, which is I think a concerning trend, are departments that have really adopted like a fast car or a squad unit to run medical calls, and they usually put the same crew on that particular apparatus or vehicle. Well, they're running a significant amount more, especially in those late night hours, than the rest of the department. For them, a 4896 or a 2448 might not make a lot of sense, So, but because we do a good for the goose is good for the gander mentality in the fire service, and I get the HR nightmare. If you have 2 stations in your department of 20 stations that run all night, well, they probably need a different shift than that outlying station that runs maybe 10 calls a month.
Yeah, that's the challenge, right? That's where you come into it.
Such a challenge.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do believe, based on the research and talking to Sarah, Dr. Jenke and James Gearing and some of the research that's coming out, that the 4 shift where you can at least get 3 days of recovery between shifts is looking more positive than some of the others. The one thing you and I talked about was we need, I think we were saying, between like 5 to 7 hours to start to really process the deep trauma. Is that correct? Of sleep. Once we get into that deeper sleep for that longer period, isn't that where the trauma starts to, where our brain starts to process that more?
So you'll hear different people giving different answers when it comes to like that actual hour, right? Kind of the good rule of thumb is it takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of mental energy for you to do these types of things. So in order for you to do this type of processing, you're going to have rest, right? So, but the amount of rest that you specifically will need will be dependent on your specific needs. What does your mental health look like? And I'm not saying mental health in the words of like how many disorders do you have. I mean, truly brain health. Do you have a lot of brain-derived neurotropic factor, which, if you've got a lot of cortisol, if you've got a lot of stress going on in your body, you have a diminished level of BDNF. So, like, growing new neurons is hard for you if you're stressed. Clearing out dead and dying neurons is hard for you if you're stressed. Getting the right amount of glucose and oxygen to your brain is harder if you're under a lot of stress. So these things put us at a disadvantage, and rest is one of those times where we can kind of set that scale back into our favor, or at least give us a leg up. A 48-hour shift, when that came out, and it was based on that idea, give more time for rest. There's a lot of evidence in favor and against any shift, no matter what shift you want to pick on right now. Just engage in some of your favorite forms of research bias and prove that you're right to all of your friends.
Right.
You can absolutely do it. But what we're seeing is the number of departments who said, on that second day, it gives my people some time to sleep in. Yet most all of those departments had some type of administrative officer who said, no, we got roll call at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Well, you completely diminished it. We have to sleep.
Well, we do that to ourselves, right? Well, we'll give them time to sleep in, but we're still having our briefing at 7:30 every day. Right. Or we'll give them time to work out, but we're going to have our briefing over that. And so it's like, you're talking out of both ends here. You got to make a decision. Same thing with paging systems. Some firehouses have paging systems throughout the entire station, but you might have 4 units there. So even though the medic unit's going out, everybody else is getting toned out on that. And I think those are things that, as we continually have conversations like that, departments need to evaluate. Hey, how can we start to help get our members more rest? How can we get them? And maybe education is another great piece to this. Is, obviously you being on this program and people listening to this are all of a sudden more aware of how sleep affects the total mental health picture of it. And I think this is where it begins. This is where that change begins as research continually develops. The one thing you mentioned was inflammation. And when you dig into all of our issues, talk a little bit more about inflammation. Like, so mentally, how does that, you mentioned how it affects our brain chemistry, but that ties into nutrition, that ties into sleep, that ties into fitness, that ties into our social relationships in a way, correct?
Yeah. When we are inflamed, we are not feeling well. Like That's just kind of how that game works. And if I'm not feeling well, I'm not functioning at the best of my ability. And this is true whether I'm trying to just process a day, right? Or if I'm trying to save my marriage, or if I'm responding to a particular emergency. If I don't feel well, if I'm not feeling good, I'm going to struggle in all of these other areas. So for brain health, when we look at inflammation, we're looking at the results of inflammation in what they do with these other chemicals, again, like cortisol, and then the diminished level of brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Inflammation then gets in the way, right? I'm not making the best choices when I don't feel well. So from my point of view, in the mental health side, it's about this: am I prepared for the day, right? And most of us have had a day where we woke up with a crick in our neck, and we know that we are not functioning well when we have a crick in our neck, right? We hurt, and we're short with others. We're short with ourselves. We get frustrated that we're not better, and we hyper focus on it. These things that come into our life just significantly impact our ability to function, not just day in and day out, but minute in and minute out. So now everything kind of starts to tank.
Yeah, it is a total picture that at least I'm glad we're talking about, because you're a mental health guy, I'm the fitness guy, but we both know we rely heavily on each other. Then that nutrition component can either fuel inflammation, or you can actually combat it by how you eat, and really how you sleep, and treating your body really well. And we could go on for hours about that,
Oh
and we
yeah.
probably will another time. But let's talk more about the social side of this, because you're also a fire chaplain, and that's really kind of what got you started in this whole kind of journey towards improving mental health. You had a great story about. So how did that whole thing come about as being a chaplain?
So I was doing mental health work in the fire service, and uh, pretty much the only people who were consistently doing mental health work at the level of the station, right? There's always this like upper echelon of researchers, and that exists, but actually boots on the ground. The only folks who were doing mental health were chaplains, and so we ended up. I worked with a lot of chaplains, and at the time wasn't a chaplain. And then it was one of those kind of like random trainings, and it was mostly a chaplain cohort of folks. And I was like, man, I should probably be a chaplain. And they were like, yeah, you probably should. So it was. I do have a little bit of a knack for finding myself in great situations accidentally, right? I joined the fire service and accidentally joined the fire service. That's a true story, right? It's just, and actually, that's how most of our lives work: a series of serendipitous events that lead to something that we appraise as overwhelmingly positive, because that's what we do as people. Uh, but my work as a chaplain is man, it's exciting. Like I enjoy that ability. It also gives people a little bit of a distance between that mental health word and fire service. Because strangely enough, chaplains are far more accepted than counselors in a fire hall. Even though roughly their job is equivocal, it's one is just more socially accepted than the other.
And it was kind of your in, right? To, hey, this is the way I can start having these conversations. You're talking like 20 years ago, correct? About
Oh, no,
yeah,
no, no.
almost 20.
So I joined the fire service 19 years ago, and got into the mental health side in 2008. And
Okay,
I'm a therapist, so math isn't a strong suit of mine. So whatever that is.
20. We'll call it roughly
Uh,
20. Yeah,
I think it's
15,
like
20.
45,
Yeah,
really.
yeah. It probably
I just,
feels like 40 in some, because it's enough. I've been talking about fitness in the fire service since 2010, and you're right around that same. So it's an uphill battle, but
yeah.
we've come a long way, right? I mean,
Oh my goodness. Like, can't even really see where we've come from, because we've come such a long way and made a turn. Like it's great.
and one thing that you said when we were just talking, you said, I think every fire department should reach out and try to create these relationships, create a chaplain,
Yep.
because they can help support, any peer support system that you have in place, right? They're not there to compete with that.
Yeah, and man, I love that you use that word, because I hear that all the time. That two programs that are aimed at helping the same group of folks might be competing with one another. Uh, man, There's more than one way to help someone, and no one way is for everyone. So the more options I have, like I never want to go to a buffet that only has one meat and one vegetable option. I don't think we can call that a buffet anymore. We can just say, here's your food. You know, if I'm looking at mental health, I'm looking for that buffet. I'm looking for that spread. There are folks who would never talk to a chaplain who would talk to a peer. There's folks who would never talk to a peer who would talk to a counselor because it's HIPAA compliant and confidential. I need to be focused on getting my people more options so that they have more choices about where they can get the help, knowing that the goal is for everybody to get the help. Reaching out and getting a relationship with a chaplain is a great first step, but you have to be I'll use the word cautious because it's a soft enough word. You have to be cautious when you're finding a chaplain, and it can't just be preacher down the road who can deliver one heck of a sermon on a Sunday morning. Like it needs to be someone who understands fire culture. Right? I've worked with a chaplain who. Every time I met with her, she would talk about how offended she was when she went to the fire hall.
Ooh,
Well,
that's not going to work. Yeah.
yeah, but and it's not. I worked with another chaplain. He said if I ever go into a fire hall and they change anything about the way they're acting, I'm failing.
Yeah.
Because they're
Right.
not being genuine. They're not being real. So finding someone who's got a little bit of cultural competence is huge. And what I find is that often we can empower one of our own members who is that they have a spiritual religious domain about them. We can empower them to pursue certification in chaplaincy, and they become some of the most phenomenal chaplains we've ever had. They don't have a church anywhere, right? They
Mm-hmm.
they are not the full-time preaching anything. They don't go to they're not the leader of their temple. They're not, but they're people who understand firefighters. They're people who understand EMS professionals. They're people who understand LEOs, and they're people who understand a spiritual religious domain exists. You know,
Yeah.
I believe there's a lot of chaplains out there who simply don't know they're chaplains yet. They
Right.
haven't felt that.
And it's not one particular religion, right? Like
No, not at
it's
all.
not about that. It's about connection, correct? Like you said, I religion if somebody wants to talk about it, but that's not my goal is to make that connection and help. That's the main thing, right?
Yeah, I've got no secrets. My goal is absolutely to tend to those who are in need because I believe that they are humans. I believe that they are people. I feel very called to help others. Right now, look, as a chaplain and as a believer in my faith system, would I love for everyone I encounter to see what I see? And well, of course, right? Like of course I would. But I also believe in unconditional love, unconditional positive regard, right? Even if you flatly reject my belief system, you're worthy of love. You're worthy of not being miserable every day, and you're worth this idea that 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 your life doesn't end because of your career, right?
Yeah.
You're worth something, and if we get to that talk about worth, I don't think there's anything more important a chaplain can do than to remind people that their worth is inherent, right? You don't have to prove your worth; you were born with it, and that transcends religion. It transcends a spiritual belief. It is our domain of an existential existence.
Yeah, it's about people, it's about relationships, and
People.
it's about what we talk about here, trying to be better and bring those around you better by using some of the skills you gave us. Obviously, breathing, looking in the mirror, doing some assessments, and really understanding why you're feeling certain things. And of course, I knew this was going to lead to many, many more conversations, and I can't thank you enough for being on because we could go on for hours and hours and hours. But you did say you have nothing to hide in you're an open book. We're going to find out because we got some hot seat questions for you before we leave. And these are just general things to kind of dig into you and kind of things that you do and experience or want to experience. Janelle has a bunch here set up. Some of these come from her mom, my mom, former guests, maybe some people that were on the panel that we just were on together. So with that in mind, all right, Let's do it, Janelle. Throw them in the hot seat.
Some of them I'm just making up on the fly because there's just some good stuff here. So we have covered a lot today. I'm just going to read a couple terms here. Psych ache, anti-fragile, avoidant coping, the white bear, urge surfing, end of days fallacy. First of all, we're going to need a glossary. If you can send that to us after, that would be great. I'm curious if you have a favorite term or a favorite fallacy that you like to talk about when we're talking about mental health, because there's too many good ones.
My absolute favorite thing to tell others is about the white bear. And the white bear comes from the thought of you can't think about not thinking about a white bear. So the psychologist, last name Weaver, said, come up to the stage, tell me a story about anything, and anytime you think about a white bear, I want you to ring this bell, but don't think about the white bear. And oh my goodness, and suddenly all we're thinking about. So the reason I love that one is because it involves exposure. Exposure-based treatments are the only gold standard treatments we have for trauma-related disorders. I cannot pretend I didn't live through the things that I've lived through, because that flatly rejects reality. So the white bear for me is like my guiding beacon as a therapist, as a chaplain, and as a friend to folks about how they can walk through this journey using exposure and acceptance rather than avoidance and distance.
That's a good one.
Isn't that a polar bear?
I love it.
Isn't a white bear a polar bear?
Why are you thinking about a white bear, Aaron? I clearly said, don't think about
Ring
the
the
bear.
bell, Aaron. Ring your bell.
If I had one, it'd be going on. Thank you.
I like it so much I have my own bell.
Did he just use a Jedi mind trick on me? What happened here? What are we doing? What is it?
You're gonna start acting like a chicken now. This has also been hypnosis.
I just woke up. Maybe I'll become a better host now. I think Janelle put you up to that. All right, back on track. Speaking of being a better host, I do have a great question for you. You are a member of the Tennessee Federation of Fire Chaplains. And when I say the word federation, I just think of my old school like days of following wrestling. So if you were a wrestling character, what is your name and what is your go-to patented move?
All right. I'll start with patented move. It's going to be the sleeper hold, right? Because I want you gently to go into submission, right? So that's going to be my patented move. Needs to be a chaplain related name. So we'll go with the Stache of Glory.
Oh, good one.
Father Stache of Glory. Father Stache?
I'd like to get rid of mine and choose Father Stache.
There we go. We got it.
Aaron. This is perfect. It supports that I am a dad.
Yes. So yeah. I like your power move is called the psych ache.
Oh,
that's exactly what my power move is. I don't think this was a question for me. I think this was a chance for you to show off your.
It was a little bit. I had to redeem myself for the question about what makes green, and I was like, oh, I got one. So we got Father Stache with his patented move, the psych ache.
That's great. I'm in.
Oh man! All right, I see you've got a guitar in the background.
Yeah, it's all for show.
Okay, got it. So, well, if it's all for show, then what's your go-to karaoke song?
I like anything country. So I am trying to learn to play the guitar. I have been a student of the guitar for a staggering 10 weeks because it's hard, and my kids are at the point in their school where things are hard for them, and I want them to see that things can be hard and it be okay. So I try to practice where they can see me struggle and they can see me fail and hear some of my negative self-talk and how I work myself out of that. So I truly want them to see that struggling is okay. But older country is probably my favorite karaoke song. Whiskey and You by Chris Stapleton is kind of a go-to. Then we'll give you a caveat that no one on this planet wants to hear me sing. So just because it's my favorite song doesn't mean it's good.
Oh, that's a challenge. Next time we're at a conference, I'm gonna get up there with you, I think.
Oh, that'll be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can clear
a karaoke
you know, if we have to, you know, we have to face our fears, Doc, and that would be scary for people to watch.
It would be scary for them. I would have no fear. I am the most socially awkward person. I've embraced that my whole life. So like, I don't mind being awkward. I don't mind singing off key in front of people. Now it's their fear, to your point, their fear that they would have to address.
Yeah, I'd be right there with you. I don't care. I mean, people have listened to any of one of our other episodes, 52 of them, by the way. So please look up some of the previous episodes, and hopefully you'll see that I've gotten a little bit better. But speaking of better, the final question is, what do you do, or what are you doing right now to be better?
To be better, you know, I am really working on the word no. No is a word that had left my vocabulary for quite some time, and I am actively striving for more no's, even for things that are good. Um, and that's my go-to. I am watching what I eat a little bit better. I know that my body doesn't like things that are sugary, and I also know that this time of the year is like when all the sugary things are free and widely available. So being mindful of what I consume is something that I have constantly done. But saying no, I think is my biggest what I'm doing right now for me.
Yeah, saying no to the foods, but saying no to things that you maybe don't have time for, or that maybe aren't as correct.
100%. Yeah. So I had a preacher, I don't know, probably 10 years ago. That was his sermon topic was um, anyone can say no to the bad, but can you say no to the good? Uh, and at the time, I was like, that's stupid. But remember that end of days fallacy. I'm a little bit different 10 years ago to today than I was. So I certainly hope that 10 years from now, I will continue to be different.
And better. And that's what we're all about here, is improving a little bit at a time, taking some of the great words and the great concepts that you gave us to take a breath, ask yourself, you know, why are you feeling a particular way, or why are you even acting or responding a particular way, and acknowledging that that's okay. And in some cases, the breath or walking away or doing something to help change your mindset can go really a long way in improving your mental health. You know, you just touched on focusing on nutrition, focusing on kind of being that total good package and parent. A lot of information to really help our listeners. Really appreciate your insight. And again, I knew you would be awesome. We'd love to continue our relationship and talks further. For those of you that are just listening to this on the podcast, you can see the actual video of this on the Fire Rescue One YouTube page. Highly encourage you to do it. You can see Dr. Edwards' great smile and a picture of his great stash, or as we like to call him now, Father Stache. Please rate, review the show wherever you're listening to it, whatever platform. If you have anything to give as far as feedback, we are always open to suggestions. We want to know whether we're on something or onto something. You can email us also at bettereveryshift@firerescue1.com. We are all about improving. We're improving mentally, physically, and understanding that what Dr. Edwards said is you have to really take a moment to evaluate things and look around, try to bring each other up, support each other, talk to each other, and most importantly, learn something, do something, and share something to make you and those around you better every shift. Thanks for listening, everybody.